Gaming backlogs are a thing that every single one of us has to deal with, and it will always be a looming presence that will never stop haunting you, especially after dirty Steam sales, selling games for stupidly low prices. Games that, maybe you'll play at some point in the next 5 years. For the past few months, I've been conquering my backlog, but that hasn't been enough to get through it, so this time, I'm gonna be destroying my backlog, which means I'm gonna be playing more games, with more explosions, with more tits, more violence. Oh yeah, get excited, fellas. Okay, let's see here. What's the first game on the list? Yeah, this game is hardcore. Stardew Valley has been sitting, festering in my backlog since like 2016, which was... oh, that was a long time ago. It's been sitting there because Stardew Valley had never really gelled with me. I never understood it because it didn't have guns and violence. So it was only really recently where I fully got into it thanks to my girlfriend constantly asking me to play the game with her because she loves the game. Like, loves it to the point of 100%ing the game. She's insane. I'm glad I gave the game another shot though because I enjoy it quite a lot now. Honestly, I still don't fully understand the game, and by that I mean all of the farming shit, which is probably one of the biggest parts about the game because, you know, it's a farming game. The stuff I like to do is fish. The fishing minigame is so satisfying. I adore this shit. I also like to go around befriending all of the villagers and seeing their silly little befriending cutscenes where you learn how much of a fucking freak they are. Abigail is such a loser. Imagine going out by yourself and playing an instrument all by yourself. Like, I don't know why anyone would do something by themselves, you know, all alone like a fucking loser. Linus, the homeless guy, has a really suspicious friendship cutscene. That's him teaching you how to make a certain bait for fishing, by the way. I'm still only in the first year of the game currently, so technically it's still in my backlog, but I guess you can't really beat Stardew Valley. It's endless. It's a very epic game, though. When I first saw the announcement of Solar Ash and God knows when, I thought the game looked really interesting, especially since it was a 3D game created by the person who made Hyper Light Drifter. It just had a lot going for it, straight away. Then I instantly forgot the game existed when it was announced as an Epic Game Store exclusive. Okay, that shit aside, the game did come to Steam a year later, and I picked it up around my birthday this year, after I, remembered the game existed. Solar Ash is a really cool game. The obvious thing to point out would be the game's art style. That shit just pops, it looks beautiful. Thankfully though, it's not just an amazing art direction that carries the game, as the gameplay is very fun too. I know comparison is a really cheap way to describe a game, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Solar Ash is basically Sonic mixed with Shadow of the Colossus. Your main objective of the game is to scale these massive beasts, but doing it as fast as possible. Each monster has extremely unique designs, making each one a treat to scale. The build up to each of the beasts has you platforming around, again in extremely unique and distinct locations. You go around destroying eyes that wake up the monster, causing it to roam around the area you've been exploring, disgruntled at the fact you woke it up from its nap. The worst part about Solar Ash is easily the story and the main character. The main character is voiced, which is something I wasn't expecting before going in, and I don't know. In games like this, I kinda want the game world itself to tell me its story, rather than some schizo main character talking to themselves after every big event in the game. That's my only issue with Solar Ash though. It was an awesome experience. Thankfully, it was short too. It took me around 4 hours to finish. I genuinely love short games. The older I get, the more I appreciate shorter games. I'm saying this while looking at Persona 5 in my backlog right now. How long does that game take to finish again? Oh. I do plan on coming back to Solar Ash to 100% the game, but yeah, overall it was a good time, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Another backlog video, which means another Yakuza game down. This one being, well, you saw the cover of the game a few seconds ago. I don't even know why I'm bothering with this bit. Yakuza 6 was an awesome experience. I mean, obviously, it's a Yakuza game. Even the worst ones in the series are a treat to play. After playing Yakuza 4 and 5 over the course of 2 years, moving on to Yakuza 6 felt like such an upgrade and a huge breath of fresh air. For starters, the game is on the Dragon engine, which was brand new at the time, and as amazing as everything looks, you can kinda tell it was their first time using it. Combat feels dumbed down compared to some of the previous games, games, and the engine has some of the funniest physics I have ever seen in a game before. Now these sound like negatives, but the thing is, I think these are positives. For starters, with the combat being dumbed down, I don't actually mind this. If anything, I find it way more satisfying because of it. That's because I've always been pretty god-awful at Yakuza games, I'm not gonna lie. Well, specifically, I'm god-awful at these ones, 3, 4, and 5. So, due to the dumbed down combat, I'm always able to come out on top of any of the fights without much hassle, and I feel amazing doing so with all of the beautiful Dragon Engine particle effects spraying everywhere. To be fair, it wasn't that hard on 5 either, especially when you played as Kiryu in the start. I guess I understand why the game is so easy now, because 6 was supposed to be the end of Kiryu's saga. Not anymore though. So obviously the meat slab would be at his all-time peak in this game. And as a finale for Kiryu, I think the game does a good job at quote-unquote ending his story. I mean, the story is a Yakuza story, so you know it's good, and yeah, it's a Yakuza game. I don't know how many times I can say that. You should play it. Just play it. I've already played 7, by the way, so that won't be appearing in a backlog video, but guess what might be? I wonder why people like this game so much. Dead Estate is a cool game. It's a roguelike game somewhat similar to The Binding of Isaac, except rather than being top-down, it's slightly angled. Okay, there's more to that. Aside from the fact you go from room to room, killing enemies, earning money, and slowly upgrading your character and acquiring new weapons, just like The Binding of Isaac, there are a few unique things to Dead Estate. For starters, if you take too long on any of the floors, you hear this horrific guttural sound. And after a few more seconds, this fella comes to hunt you down. He is called Chunks, he is immortal, and is absolutely horrifying. Every floor in Dead Estate has a unique theme, and as you gradually unlock new floors, you can explore different routes to take on your journey. Different routes that can change the endings and final bosses you can get. It's a pretty standard roguelike game, and if you're into stuff like The Binding of Isaac like I am, I definitely recommend this game. There was actually one night where I played this game for like 3 hours straight with no breaks. It can be very addictive. You should play Dead Estate. It's very good, and that's because it's a good game, it's not because of any other reason. Before I talk about The Last of Us itself, I need to clarify that I played this on PC. So if some things look like absolute dog shit, well, that's because the PC port is absolutely terrible and I had to play it on the lowest settings. It is easily one of, if not the worst PC ports I have ever experienced in my entire life. It's actually quite embarrassing considering the fact it was Naughty Dog themselves who ported it. So much for that Naughty Dog quality assurance, right? It came out a few months ago and since then it's had like 100 gigabytes worth of patches in an attempt to fix it. It still stutters like shit though, especially during action-packed cutscenes, and I absolutely hate that this happens because honestly I really like this game, which is a huge surprise, I know, especially if you've seen my content before and my opinions. When I first started playing the game, it didn't really click with me at first. I kinda just thought it was baby's first survival horror game, but oh man, it's so much more than that. The gameplay and combat is a lot of fun, especially the melee. Something about these combos and takedowns are just, oof. They're lovely. I mean, they all boil down to you just spamming F, but shh, they're satisfying regardless. Every weapon is a treat to use against enemies, and damn, the workbenches in this game for upgrading weapons it's just practically gun porn. The attention to detail with how Joel unloads the weaponry before performing any upgrades on the guns, it's just awesome shit and I love it. I even adore the downtime moments of just exploring in the game, and that's because of the characters and their interactions. There isn't a single badly written character in this game. They all feel so grounded and act like any person would during horrific times like this. I love me some bleak ass games, and this is definitely one of them. Well, it's a bleak game that's made me laugh a few times. These silly jokes during the game never feel forced, and if anything, it makes the characters feel even more human, cracking Silly's intense moments to try and comfort themselves.
You got something on your shoe.
Joel is an amazing character and I love his relationship with Ellie. He goes from kind of resenting her to caring for her like a daughter near the end, and you're there for the whole time seeing their relationship grow. Listen, I completely get why people love this game, and I understand even more now why people fucking hate the sequel. Okay, so we're gonna do something new for this series, and that new thing is bringing in a guest speaker to talk about a game they've recently finished in their backlog. Let's see, today's guest speaker is Dr. Skipper. Take it away.
Hello all you cool and lovely people, my name's Skipper and today I'm going to be talking about a game.
because I'm a gamer. And I play games. I've been on a Guardians of the Galaxy binge due to the third film's release, and recently I was making a video, so I was like, you know what, I see that the game's on sale on Steam, let me just try and play it again. Last time I played this game was a long time ago in 2021. I bought it on PS5 because I was guilty for only playing Spiderman on that, like for real, it just collects dust most of the time. And given that this is a single player game, I was like, you know what, let me just sit on my couch and chill. I was originally skeptical because I don't like the Avengers game at all, so I thought they were gonna, destroy the Guardians of the Galaxy thing, and I was like, oh, this is gonna suck, but I wanted it to be good in the back of my mind, and I had this hot take back then, and I still have it now. I really like Guardians of the Galaxy. Avengers was really bad since it was a tacked on live service with tons of nostalgia baity microtransactions. It was only created to make money off the Marvel name, but much like the first film by James Gunn, the Guardians of the Galaxies are seen as a bunch of nobodies that creative people tend to make somebodies out of. The game is pure single player from beginning to end. You can get every suit for free just by looking for them, and with such an ethically safe game, it's no surprise that a lot of love was put into it. The gameplay can be boring at times. It's not as bad and janky as the Avengers game. Playing as the Hulk is just, oh my god. But otherwise of its gameplay, the most shocking thing is that it has such good writing and story. It's so good that I feel like you're playing a Guardians of the Galaxy movie from the MCU. Well, that's my 2 cents of a game I played recently. Thank you for listening to me, and goodbye.
Are you all ready to hear what I think about the Callisto Protocol? Can I get a drum roll, please? It's alright. Yeah, that's it really. I don't think it's great. I'll probably never replay it ever again, but I don't think it's bad either like a lot of people have made it out to be. It's like a 6.5 out of 10. Maybe a 7 out of 10 on a good day. Now there's a lot of things I did enjoy. For starters, I genuinely loved the setting. It being set in a high-tech prison on some dying planet is a really cool idea, but I don't think they take full advantage of the setting. A lot of it feels very samey, and I think that's mainly because of these. The fucking vent sections. They really should have made this game exclusive to current gen consoles because there are so many vent sections to hide loading screens for the PS4 and Xbox One versions. Or they could have just optimized it in general. We all remember the launch. The performance was pretty god-awful, even on a NASA supercomputer. Thankfully though, I can safely say it runs fine now. I got a few stutters here and there, but it was playable at least. One of the most unique things about Callisto was the fact it had a heavy focus on melee combat, rather than using guns. A lot like Condemned, and I really like Condemned. I literally gush about it in my most recent video on detective games. But the Callisto Protocol's melee is incredibly simple. Now this isn't entirely a bad thing, it's just, well, it's alright. Just like everything else in the game. The story's alright, the enemy variety is alright, apart from the mini-bosses, where there is literally just one two-headed bloke you have to fight like 3 fucking times. Fuck this guy, and both of his heads. I'm honestly really struggling to say much about Callisto Protocol at all. It's probably the most alright game I've ever played in my entire life. And like I said earlier, it's a game that I'm glad I finished. I don't think I will ever return to it again. I also beat the DLC and that was alright too. Okay, I'm sick of saying the word alright. I've said it 7 times already. I've been counting. Cult of the Lamb is alright. Pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. When I first saw Cult of the Lamb, it really stuck out amongst everything else that was announced at the time. And obviously that was because of the incredible art style and direction. Honestly, I think that's what caught almost everyone's attention. I love it a lot, but sadly it didn't carry the game for me. Cult of the Lamb is a mix of 2 genres. On one half, it's a base management-esque game where you run your own cult and look after your members, which includes sweeping up their shit because they just shit on the ground for whatever fucking reason, the dirty twats. The other half of the game is a Binding of Isaac-esque roguelite mode, which is where you get most of the resources needed for your base. At first, I had a lot of fun. It was absolutely perfect to play on my Steam Deck, but after a few hours, that's where the cracks started to show for me. And by a few hours, I mean 5 hours. And that's because Cult of the Lamb is trying to be 2 games in one. Neither of the genres it tries to be are in depth enough to be interesting for a long period of time. And also I already don't really like base building management style games, so it was already a losing battle. and because of that, I got bored of the cult management pretty quickly. What's depressing is that this is probably the strongest part of the game, because the roguelite side is incredibly shallow. I wasn't expecting Binding of Isaac depth here, but I was at least hoping for a bit more. There are 4 different biomes you can explore, and they all play the exact same. The only difference being enemies and mini-bosses, but that's not saying much considering the mini-bosses have like 2 different moves each. They're just not interesting to fight. The combat isn't enjoyable either. This might be a skill issue, but I've been hit so many times just because I cannot tell what the fuck is going on during fights. It's just so visually noisy. The charming art style is what carries this game, because without it, I don't think many people would like it as much as they do. I feel like I'm being super harsh here. Don't get me wrong, it's still pretty good. It's just after 5 hours, I don't see myself coming back to it again. I think I've played enough of it to know it's just not for me. Also, life's too short, and I have so many goddamn games in my library. I can't waste my time forcing myself through shit I don't enjoy. I love Miles Morales. Just like with Spider-Man 2018 on the PC, I double dipped with Miles Morales. I already finished the game on PS5 beforehand and I thought, fuck it, I loved it so much, I might as well buy it again on PC. I also did the same with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. I think Insomniac might be my favourite company out there, despite the horrible overlords that own them. Here's a little hot take. Can I get another drum roll, please? Thank you. I think Miles Morales is better than Spider-Man 2018. Yeah, I said it. I fucking said it. Miles Morales is a much shorter game than Spider-Man. There's way less content, sure, but that also means there's less filler. There's no MJ sections at all. It's just good old Spider-Man action consistently through its short runtime. It also takes place during Christmas. Listen, I'm a sucker for snow in real life and in games, so this is already better than normal-ass New York for me. There's the brand new mechanics unique to Miles, like cloaking and the Venom powers. I adore the Venom powers so much, man. It helps expand the combat, letting you use these special moves that look flashy as fuck. You can also use them during traversal to speed things up with a boost upwards or forwards. There's even some smaller things that I prefer, like Miles' animations. The guy is clearly nowhere near as confident being Spider-Man as Peter, so he's way more flaily with his movement. Even with his takedowns, there's little minor animation details to show he's still new to this. Of course, we can't forget the exaggerated swagger of a black. I 100% did Miles Morales on PC. It was awesome. I also did the same with Rift Apart. Keep putting your games on PC, Insomniac, because I'll buy them all at full price like a dumbass. Exoprimal is a PvE PvP game where you control an exosuit with a variety of different abilities and compete against other players with killing dinosaurs and moving a payload. Oh god. Okay, to give the game credit, it can be pretty fun mindlessly killing random ass immense swarms of dinosaurs with a variety of different weapons. It reminds me of the mindless fun of the Earth Defense Force games, but the fact it basically relies on other players being active and this is the player base currently at launch, yeah, kinda disregards any credit I can give. Exoprimal is a game that nobody asked for, and I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. It will flatline in a month or 2, maybe 5 months if I'm feeling generous. It's a game that was made because of a plague spreading around the industry currently. And oh yeah, look at that, it's slowly coming onto the screen. Okay, just wait for it, I have an awesome effect ready for when it gets here. BAM! Live service games. Capcom heard the community begging, and I mean literally begging, for a Dino Crisis remake. A slow, methodical survival horror game where you face dinosaurs. And they thought, these people clearly like dinosaurs and they seem desperate as fuck. So, let's make them rain from the sky, which is gonna be a metaphor for the money raining down on us from our epic, awesome live service battle pass system. They knew what they were doing. There's even a character that looks like the main girl from Dino Crisis. Oh, I can't forget the fact that they've monetized the fuck out of this shit right out of the gate with a battle pass. A battle pass that you don't even get from buying the base game. Did I mention it costs £50? Don't worry though, because just like with any battle pass, there's a section for free where you can unlock, well, literally nothing for 30 levels. But it's okay, because you can get this sticker. I've always wanted the Skull Soldier sticker. Thank you, game. I don't plan on ever returning to Exoprimal, and I don't think it'll last long enough for me to do so anyway. This backlog video has been kinda negative so far, so here's an awesome game that I played. Turbo Overkill. It's another retro first-person shooter, but don't let that put you off. Turbo Overkill goes above and beyond, making it stand out amongst the sea of them. I'll only be showing footage of Act 1 in this section because I don't want to spoil how crazy shit gets later. The game takes place in a futuristic cyberpunk setting, and it takes full advantage of that, especially with the weaponry and the main character. The bloke you're playing as literally has a chainsaw leg that you can use when you slide. The slide is actually viable in combat. It's actually really good too. This game is awesome. Every single weapon is a treat to use, and they all have some sort of extra gimmick attached to them. There's your standard shit like a double barrel shotgun, but the one in Turbo Overkill is also a grenade launcher. A small detail I like with the weapons though is when you're out of ammo, your character just holds his middle finger up constantly with the equipped weapon that's empty. It's a very nice and polite way of letting you know you need to find some bullets. There's also vehicle sections that aren't shit. Listen, it's just an incredibly good game. And if you're a bit curious what Act 2 is like, well, here's a little spoiler to what it looks like. Yeah, pretty fucked up if you ask me. Okay, it's time for the guest speaker to talk about the game they've recently finished in their backlog. And in this episode, who is it? Let's see. I have my good friend Ragucci talking about Alan Wake. Take it away.
Alan Wake has been on my backlog probably since I played Control, and I had played Quantum Break before, but Control really got me into Remedy games and like the Remedy verse, I'll call it, because it all feels like Quantum Break, Control, Alan Wake, and Max Payne are all one game or one universe, especially where Control kind of established that. And when the Alan Wake Remastered came out, it was kind of finally the opportunity had arisen to play this game in the best possible way on console. So I beat it and played it, and it took me about, I don't know, 2 weeks, a week and a half, and I enjoyed it. It's got a lot of Euro jank to it. It's clear that there is some creative minds like Sam Lake and the others who have this weird idea of story and narrative and writing, and it's a little early 2010s. You can really feel like the era it was made in, but it gets kind of serious and more dramatic as the game goes, and I find that really appealing. And I really enjoy the gameplay loop. For some reason, focusing down enemies with the flashlight to sort of take their armor down and then blasting them away, it's not really something you see with every game. I mean, of course, there are enemies with armor, and you have to whittle them down to kind of reveal the the health or the unarmored version of them to be able to kill them. But this is every enemy in the game, and there's not a lot of progression systems, but I just kind of found the gameplay loop engaging, even though it is quite repetitive. The game does feel a little aged, though. I'm not gonna lie. It's a simple like point and shoot third person action game. There's like almost nothing to it powers wise. Like the gameplay is just shooting. There really isn't much here. But the story, I think, is where this game kind of separates itself from other titles of the time. I feel like this is very much a Colts classic game. I know a lot of people who really liked it and were really into it when it first came out. I think because there was really just nothing like it. You play as obviously Alan Wake, you're a writer, and your story, quote unquote, a story that you wrote is sort of coming to life, and Alan Wake is trying to essentially figure out what's going on while at the same time trying to rescue his wife, Alice. And I think it makes for an interesting setting. I think it does a lot of things uniquely. I think just the themes it explores are not themes or characters or even professions that video games explore. What game do you know that takes place from the perspective of a writer, of a novel writer? It's just kind of interesting. And I'm really excited to see what Alan Wake 2 is going to do. Obviously, it's going to blow Alan Wake 1 out of the water just on principle, right? But I really think this game has an audience to capture, being removed from Alan Wake, now Remedy doing Control and Quantum Break. I think they've really found like a weird niche of game and genre and way to tell story that they, I think, just pioneered with Alan Wake 1. I'm still going through the special episodes, and I'm going to get all the achievements, but I've really enjoyed my time with Alan Wake. It is a fun little romp. Not taking it too seriously, but yeah, I'm having a great time with it, and it's only $30 retail, but I got it on sale, so that was good.
Okay fellas, please don't be mad at me, but I've actually already played Metro Exodus before. I know, but let me explain myself here. I played it back in 2019 when it came out, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But see, here's the thing. That was like 4 years ago. I barely remember anything from the game. A few years after, if you owned the game, you were given the Enhanced Edition for free. But see, I wasn't able to play it because it required one of these fancy-ass new RTX cards. I had a 1080 in my PC at the time, so it was just incompatible. I couldn't even open the game. That is until now. I got a new PC pretty recently with absolutely disgusting specs, and now I can finally play the Enhanced Edition in all of its ray tracing glory. I honestly didn't remember anything going into it, which is why I'm including it in this backlog video. So what did I think of it after 4 long years? Well, it's still really good, but holy shit, it's jankier than I remember. In terms of atmosphere in its world, Metro Exodus is quite frankly one of, if not the most immersive games I've ever played, and the Enhanced Edition truly enhances that. You get it? The UI in the game is very minimalist, with everything important being shown to you on Artyom's arm, like the time of day and radiation levels. The usual shit that's important while exploring a post-apocalyptic world. That immersion does get broken though by the jank and bugs, but 4A, the developers, aren't exactly the biggest studio. Yet despite this, they still did an amazing job with this game. Metro Exodus was a new take on the Metro series. In the first 2 Metro games, it all took place within these dark linear tunnels, and honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan of these two. Mainly because of the lack of an FOV slider. Like, what the fuck, guys? Why wouldn't you include that in a first-person game? What made Metro Exodus different was the fact that the game took place in fairly open areas where you're free to explore. Now, usually I don't like open world games, but in Metro Exodus, they aren't big enough to get annoying, and there's quite a good amount of points of interest to explore along the way to main objectives. Not to mention the variety of the open areas. I never thought I'd be exploring a desert in a Metro game, but hey, you gotta expect the unexpected nowadays. I can't really say much on the story of the game because I don't really care for it, if I'm honest. I just like the immersion, honestly. It's unlike anything I've ever played. It's actually made me really excited for Stalker 2 to come out. I've never played the original games because they just look way too janky and old for me. I'm very sorry, diehard Stalker fans. Despite the gimmick of Exodus being open world, my favorite sections of the game are the linear areas. You just can't beat refined curated sections where the developers know exactly what you're going to be doing and seeing. My favourite level is this one just after the first snowy open world where you're ambushed by cannibals and you have to fight your way through this horrifying base filled with corpses and rotting bodies, all the while you hear this awesome music blasting, hyping you up as you go. You're not getting away! Then there's the tiger level, this linear forest which slows everything down and takes on a much more horror-centered tone. There's also a scary bear. I've written in the script that I'm not allowed to make a Freddy Fazbear joke here, so I'm gonna respect my past self and avoid doing so. I hope you die in a fire! You also get a crossbow in this level, which is the best weapon in the game, so Metro Exodus is still just as good as I remembered it. And I'm glad I got the chance to replay it again. I was recently sent a VR headset by the company Pico. They specifically sent me a Pico 4 headset, and holy shit, this thing is amazing. It's opened up an entire new world of games for me. I can finally get up close and personal with Freddy Fazbear. Fuck me though, VR games are expensive. So how about I play a free VR mod for a game literally everyone owns? Half-Life 2 VR. That's right, you can play the entirety of Half-Life 2 in VR. It's absolutely amazing. It's so incredible being immersed in City 17, being able to actually witness the scale of everything. The footage you're seeing doesn't do any of this shit justice. You really need to have the headset on for yourself. Huh? Anyway, this section isn't actually about Half-Life 2 VR, instead it's about another free mod for the game. It's been ages since I talked about the original Entropy Zero. I actually don't even remember that much from it. I do remember it feeling a lot like a Half-Life 2 mod though. A good one too, and it made me very excited to play the sequel. And oh my god, I am so glad I played it. Entropy Zero 2 shouldn't be a free mod. This shit should have been a paid experience similar to Black Mesa. It's incredible. Unlike in the original game where you're playing as a Metro Cop, which is like the lowest form of Combine you could be, you're instead promoted into becoming an elite Combine, decked out with brand new shiny white Supreme armor. I like how that gives lore reasons for the HUD being overhauled too. It's cool shit. I love it when games do that. There's a lot of new things in Entropy 02, ranging from small things to huge overhauls. A small thing that was added that I love is a kick, which allows you to breach doors and just kick physics objects about like a mug that's easily entertained by the stupidest shit, like me. A huge overhaul in Entropy 02 is the gunplay and animations. The developer Breadman, yes that's his name, went all out on improving the gunplay. Every single gun has new reload animations and they just feel so much weightier. It's good shit.
Oh, this is beautiful.
There's a lot of sections where the game tries to fit into events that happened in Half-Life 2, and even try to fill in the gaps of what could have possibly happened in Half-Life 2 Episode 3, while also connecting the universe to Portal. There's a section where you have to escape an abandoned Aperture testing chamber with a huge abomination chasing you down, all while carrying around a defective turret called Wilson, my beloved. Wilson also works like the gnome in Half-Life 2 Episode 2, where you can actually carry him to the end of the game, which of course gives you an achievement, but also gives you an entirely new ending. He also has dialogue, like a lot of dialogue.
Just made the boss back after a big raid. Yeah. A dangerous raid. They didn't stand a chance, did they, boss?
No, I killed them all.
Her business is appreciated.
Could you let us through?
Gotcha.
Anyway, play Entropy 02. That's all I have to say. Okay, it's actually time to talk about a VR game that I quickly got out of my backlog, and that game is... I don't even know why I build up to saying what the game is when it's always on the screen for a good 10 seconds before I even start talking about it. Arizona Sunshine is a very old VR game, and I wanted to start with it because I know for a fact it will make playing something as advanced as Half-Life Alyx that much more impactful. That doesn't mean Arizona Sunshine is bad though. It was actually a very fun experience. Although it did outstay its welcome near the end, despite being a 4-hour campaign. A lot of this was down to how basic it was. It was really cool being immersed in this world in VR, but all you could really do is just shoot zombies. You can't even grab them like you can in, say, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, another game in my backlog. There is a nice variety of levels though, to keep shit fresh. I mean, sure, a lot of the levels are just deserts, because it takes place in Arizona, which is just ball out New Vegas in real life. There's one mission where you go down into a mine and it's pitch black, which means you need to have one hand holding a flashlight, limiting your defense, as you were able to dual wield beforehand. It made the entire level so tense, especially when you could hear a zombie lurking about, but you just couldn't see them. There's a mission later taking place at some industrial plant, which was used as a military base during the early days of the outbreak. Obviously it's been overrun now, and there's a section where you can grab a minigun, and you can hold this minigun with one hand, which means I did stupid ass hand gestures while using it. It was awesome. I'm glad my first VR game was this. Sure, it was simple, but it was a lot of fun. It wouldn't have been a VR headset seller back then for me though, but I know for a fact it's gonna make me appreciate more recent VR games. Like the sequel. Okay, I'm gonna do something a bit different here. I'm gonna put the guest speaker in the middle of the video rather than waiting till the end. This time we have my good friend MrPungYung talking about, let's see here, Mass Effect Andromeda. Take it away.
Man, wouldn't it be funny if you got a game day one and then first finished it 6 years later? Yep, that's the story with me and Mass Effect Andromeda. I have pretty fond memories of the original Mass Effect trilogy. While I think that only the third game has properly good gameplay, every entry has a fantastic setting, great presentation, awesome characters, and engaging stories. It's only logical then that we make a new game in the franchise with none of these things. Yeah! Oh, that was supposed to be a kick? Oh. This game really is one of the worst examples of an open world game and epitomizes everything I hate about them. Drive car, talk to people, drive car, shoot people, drive car, talk to people, drive car, I mean, fuck!
I fucking hate this stupid game!
Gameplay is fine, I suppose, but once you've fought one type of enemy, you've pretty much fought them all. Doesn't help that you only have 3 powers at a time, and you have 0 reason to switch them out once you've found a setup that works. And the presentation is painfully generic, not at all comparable with the original trilogy. Early in my playthrough, I genuinely forgot I was playing a Mass Effect game. This game was a colossal waste of time. It's one of those rare instances where I felt remorse for playing a video game, like I could have been doing something productive. Well, at least the cutscenes are still pretty funny.
I wasn't the biggest fan of Jedi Fallen Order. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a bad game, I just thought it was super average, and if it wasn't for the Star Wars skin, I can imagine it wouldn't be rated anywhere nearly as highly as it was. It just didn't really have its own identity. It had combat like Sekiro, except incredibly watered down, and it had the traversal and climbing of Uncharted and Tomb Raider, except again, really watered down. It didn't do anything exceptionally well whatsoever. The charm of it being a single player Star Wars game after such a long drought wore off after the halfway point of playing through it. Now, Jedi Survivor, on the other hand, is a completely different story. It feels like Respawn has finally found its identity with this game, and Cal Kestis can finally shine without being in the shadows of Sekiro and Uncharted, which are still better games, but shh. A lot of things I had issues with remained the same, but they decided to actually expand on them rather than just keeping them being watered down copies or just scrapping them entirely. For example, the combat, which they did quite a lot of things to improve. They made it actually satisfying by adding dismemberment to stormtroopers and humanoid enemies, which yeah, wasn't a thing in the original game. Don't ask me how or why this scalding hot blade wouldn't cut a limb in half, but hey, at least it happens now. They also added a stance system to the game, similar to Neo. Unlike Neo though, there's way more than 3, which is awesome, but there's a catch. You can only equip 2, which isn't as awesome, but oh well, I guess you can't have everything. These stances are all completely different. There's your obvious basic lightsaber swinging stance, which I never unequipped because you just can't go wrong with it. There's a stance dedicated to dual wielding lightsabers, and of course I can't forget my favourite, the one where you wield a gun.
He wields a gun.
Regarding the traversal, they obviously kept the basics, you know, the usual double jump and lackluster climbing mechanics, but they added way more moves to expand on the platforming and traversal. This force dash move you can do in the air is an absolute game changer, let me tell you. It's good shit. This traversal expansion was needed though, because they made the planets absolutely huge, which means there's like 4 of them, which is a bit underwhelming considering the fact it's a Star Wars game. I can't really complain though, because there's an insane variety in the environments on these planets, and with them being much bigger, it means the puzzles are much larger too, and they aren't annoying as fuck anymore like they were in the first game. Jedi Survivor is good, and you all would have probably known that if the PC port wasn't so shit at launch, causing it to completely fall off and be forgotten about instantly. It's fixed now, so if you see it on sale, I definitely recommend giving it a shot. You all ready for a controversial take? Can I get a drum roll, please? This is the only Shadow Warrior game I enjoy. Wait, no booing? I'm surprised at the lackluster response to this. Oh wait, it's a Shadow Warrior game I'm talking about. I don't think anyone actually gives a shit. I didn't enjoy Shadow Warrior 1 and 2, and I am just talking about the reboots here, not the original. I tried both of them and never finished either, because I just found them really boring. The first game is a middle-of-the-road first-person shooter that just felt kinda off the whole time, and the second game was a looter shooter. I'm not even going to elaborate on why it's pretty dogshit. Shadow Warrior 3, on the other hand, was inspired by Doom Eternal, the best first-person shooter ever made. I don't make the rules here, fellas. There's even platforming in Shadow Warrior 3. I like the platforming in Doom Eternal. Shut up. Shadow Warrior 3 doesn't waste your time whatsoever. The world has been destroyed by a giant dragon that was summoned in Shadow Warrior 2, blah blah blah. Who cares? You start shooting shit almost instantly, with the starting mission having you scale this giant dragon trying to take it down as the game introduces you to all of its mechanics. Shadow Warrior 3 does what Doom Eternal does with its ammo resources, where there isn't enough ammo for you to keep using the same weapon for the entire game. You're pushed to use your entire arsenal. There's also glory kills, although the difference being after a glory kill in Shadow Warrior 3, you get a one-use unique weapon from the fella you ripped the spine out of. These weapons range in quality, but some of them are disgustingly powerful. This section on Shadow Warrior 3 is pretty short because the game itself is. It took me 4 hours to finish, which isn't a bad thing because I love short games. I'm saying this again with Persona 5 just staring at me in my Steam library. I'm gonna have to get to you someday, just Not right now. Okay, so I hate to admit this, but it's been quite a while since I started scripting this backlog video. I started writing it before Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth had come out, and since then, well, it's actually come out, and I've 100%ed it. I've been a very busy guy. Regardless, this is about Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, which is probably the longest game title ever. This game is amazing, and the fact it's a quote-unquote side Yakuza game is honestly insane to me. Not only does it have some of the absolute best real-time combat in the series, I would honestly put it up there with Lost Judgment in terms of its quality. It also has an incredible story, and it's what Yakuza 6 should have been. This shit is the real send-off Kiryu deserved. I know he's in Infinite Wealth, but Gaiden feels like his proper send-off. For a side game, there's a lot of new things here, like the new agent fighting style, which Kiryu learnt from being in the Daidoji faction, who aren't a Yakuza family. They're instead some weird secret organization who are helping Kiryu wipe his face from the earth and keep him hidden. With this fighting style, you get secret agent gadgets that are, well, about as over the top as you can imagine for a Yakuza game. My personal favorite is the exploding cigarette. If you can pull the timing off with this in a crowd of enemies, it makes you feel so cool. Oh, and for the first time in the series, you can actually customize the main character. That's right, you can dress up Kiryu. In my playthrough, I dressed him up as a middle-aged Yorkshireman who's trying to dress younger than he actually is. And I kept this style for the entire game. It was awesome. Gaiden doesn't outstay its welcome either. It ends just at the right time, taking around 10 hours to finish with only 5 chapters. It means there's no filler sections that just pad out the game, which I hate to admit is a huge problem with a lot of the Yakuza games. Even Infinite Wealth has that problem, forcing you into the Don Doko Island minigame a few hours into it. Gaiden has none of that, but despite this, it still doesn't have a small amount of side content. All of the side content you'd expect for a Yakuza game is here, and just to the same amount of quality, especially with its sub-stories. In fact, I think this game has some of the best in the series. There's one where you meet Kaito from the Judgment games, and you can actually fight him as Kiryu. During this whole sub-story, I was so happy seeing my boy. It also confirms that Kiryu is canonically stronger than Kaito, and, well, that's only because he can Tiger Drop. There's even some new side content here, like the Hostess minigames, which are in live action for some reason. Like, they actually hired actors for this shit to just talk into a camera and pretend they're talking to Kiryu. It's also probably why the file size is 87 gigabytes. About 50 gigabytes of that is uncompressed Hostess minigame footage, I guarantee you. Oh god, I just realized I haven't even mentioned the arena yet, which could be its own entire game in itself. Listen, just play Gaiden, especially if you're a Yakuza fan. If you aren't yet, and you want to get into the series, play 0, Kiwami, Kiwami 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Like a Dragon first. Oh yeah, we got another VR game. Expect way more to be on these backlog videos because I aim to beat at least one every month, so there'll always be one in these videos. So yeah, Vertigo. Well, I should really be calling it Vertigo Remastered, even though I could not find any game called Vertigo beforehand, so I have no idea why it's called Vertigo Remastered. Vertigo Remastered at a first glance looks kinda like arse, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It looks like shit at times. But don't let any of that visual graphic fidelity shit fool you, because this was some of the most fun I've had in 3 hours. Vertigo is heavily inspired by Half-Life and Portal. It's like a nice combination of the two, which is perfect considering the fact I played Vertigo hot off the heels of Half-Life Alyx, so I was craving more of the same shit, and Vertigo did not disappoint. In the game, you're some random-ass woman who was unfortunately teleported to some strange facility in an unknown place. This is where the Half-Life inspiration comes in, as the facility has gone to complete shit. The security is on the fritz attempting to kill you on sight, along with alien specimens trying to do the exact same thing. Now, I would tell you more about the story if I gave a shit about it, which, I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't, but that didn't take away from the game at all. It was just a fun time from start to end, and it caught me by surprise. I feel kinda bad because during the introduction, I didn't have high hopes just because of how visually bad it looked, for a VR game especially, which was very shallow of me. I am very, very sorry, Vertigo. I severely underestimated you. There's a nice variety here. There are moments where you could be fighting fighting a giant tar blob which you can pick up at the end and squeeze to death. This is Frank, and I made sure to keep him with me at all times during my playthrough. There's also a moment where you're shrunk down and have to explore an office for a keycard, and the enemies are just fucking massive, yet they still take the same amount of bullets. It's kind of weird. That variety is very consistent, and not just with its level design, but also with its gameplay. For starters, there's this portal device you get at the start where you can aim a line to a certain point and create a portal bubble that you have to physically put towards your head to teleport into. There's an energy sword which can deflect bullets and just looks really cool, and all the guns were an absolute blast to use. I don't really know what else to say about the game, it's just awesome. It's made me really excited to play the sequel, Vertigo 2, so keep an eye out for that in a future backlog video. Oh, and I played through the whole game on call with my friend MrPungYung, who would laugh hysterically at the stupid shit I would do in VR. There's a lot of hype and praise around this game. People even consider it better than the Souls series and Bloodborne itself. Now, do you want to hear my opinion on it? Can I get a drum roll, please? I think it's great. I give it an 8 out of 10, but you're crazy if you think it's better than Dark Souls, never mind Bloodborne. Don't get me wrong, Lies of P is a great game, like I just said. The fact it's a retelling of the Pinocchio story set in a horrific Victorian setting with Souls-like combat is just, mwah, it's perfect. It's the best adaptation of Pinocchio ever created. Don't show me that stupid ass Disney shit, show me this! Horror Pinocchio, oh yeah! There's a lot of mechanics that revolve around the whole Pinocchio shit, like being able to choose whether or not to lie to characters around the world of crap. Depending on your choice, there can be repercussions that change quite a few outcomes to quests, incentivizing multiple playthroughs. Oh, and there's this cool mechanic with the weapons where you can switch the handle and tip of the weapon with any other one, which means you can mix and match so many combinations, again adding so much to the replay value. But despite all of this sounding so amazing and perfect, I personally never want to replay Lies of P again. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy my time with the game, like, a lot. I beat it in 3 days, I just couldn't put it down, but after a certain point, I started to get annoyed with it. The further I got into the game, the more I started to compare it to Dark Souls 2 of all things, especially with its enemy placement, because holy shit, some of these areas feel like they were just designed to be annoying and piss you off, rather than being a hurdle to overcome. Although something I can give to Lies of P, it's nowhere near as bad as it was in the Lords of the Fallen reboot. God, that game was horrific with its enemy placement. In Lies of P, the enemy placement ramps up more and more up until the final area of the game where it just gets absolutely ridiculous. To the point where the only viable way I could see of getting through was just running and not fighting anything. Although it's a pretty big one, that is my only issue with Lies of P. Everything else is phenomenal, especially the boss fights. Now, this is an area I just cannot compare to Dark Souls 2, as Lies of P takes the quality over quantity approach when it comes to its bosses. And whilst sure there are some stinky caca piece of shit bosses every now and then, the vast majority are standouts. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the level design, where Lies of P takes the Dark Souls 1 approach, which is what every game should do because Dark Souls 1's level design is masterful. So yeah, I finished Lies of P and I really enjoyed it. I don't want to play it ever again though. Maybe in a few years I might, I don't know. Okay, so we got another guest speaker, and this time it's my good friend TheRetroDen, who's going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Take it away.
Hello everyone, my name is TheRetroDen and my entire thing is getting platinum trophies and completing games. When I was asked by Proxidist to talk about a game I was playing from my own backlog, I thought of talking about Jack X, which is a game I have been playing for the past week or so, but that changed when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth launched on the 29th of February, bumping it up to number 1 on my to-beat list. Despite only having around 10 hours of the game, I can clearly say this game is an absolute improvement over the first one. The game feels more fluid, the combat feels amazing as always, and the game has a huge amount of content. I mean, literally around 200 hours if you want to get the platinum trophy, which you know I'm going to grind for. This game is going to put a huge halt on my 2024 backlog, but I really don't mind since it is a very thorough experience that I can appreciate no matter how much time it takes me. One of the main reasons that led me to enjoying Final Fantasy VII Remake and wanting to play Rebirth is the sheer fact that the goober that is Tetsuya Nomura is behind the story, which leads to endless possibilities on how this game is going to end. I do need to give some credit to the gameplay because it is way more diverse than in Remake. I would like to explain how so, but my time here is short and it is really hard to explain if you haven't played the first one, so for now I'll leave you with some closing thoughts. You can play as Sephiroth, 10 out of 10, goodbye.
Jusant is a quaint little game created by the studio Don't Nod, who are known for the Life is Strange series. Wait a second, Life is Strange?
Now you're totally stuck in the retro zone. Sad face.
Okay, despite their track record, Jusant is a very nice game. It's the type of game you play when you're feeling a bit down after a long day of work and just want to play something that feels like sinking into a nice warm bubble bath. Jusant's main mechanic is its climbing, and that's it really. It knows what it is and it knows what it's trying to do, and you gotta respect that, because it does it really well. The climbing never becomes boring, as the terrain constantly changes the higher up you go, and yes, there are some struggles along the way, especially with the stamina system, which you need to be very aware of the longer the climb gets. It's all worth it in the end though when you get to see the breathtaking vistas and see how far you've come on your journey. It's just a nice experience. It's a short game that doesn't take too long to finish, and it was a very unique experience. Don't Nod kinda just dropped this one out of nowhere, and I know I haven't had that much to say about it, but I do recommend checking it out. It's definitely something you should experience for yourself, and I don't regret playing it. I didn't used to be a fighting game person. In fact, I used to despise them, and that all came down to a skill issue. I just didn't have the reflexes to pull off the combos you need to do to have any form of fighting chance against anyone. I tried Mortal Kombat 11 back in the day, and while I did put 20 hours into it, I just didn't understand it. It never clicked for me. That was until Mortal Kombat 1. Now, I know this is like one of the weakest in the series, and it lacks a lot of content compared to the other Mortal Kombat games, but I still had fun with it. I don't know if it's been dumbed down too, because I can actually pull off some of the combos. I played through the story of Mortal Kombat 1 and it was a good time. The main highlight is really the cutscenes, and they do not disappoint, with Johnny Cage being a highlight.
You should seriously consider becoming a screenwriter. What in the actual fuck?
Good evening, Johnny Cage.
Although Megan Fox was a very unfortunate casting.
Serena's right. Because of Quan Chi's magic, my realm's people are no longer poisoned by sunlight. We've finally escaped the shadows.
I tried some of the invasion mode, which wasn't too bad, but the fact this is the main place where you unlock cosmetics, well, I can imagine it would get insanely repetitive very quickly. Oh, and before I finish up, I just want to say that I actually played online for the first time in a fighting game, and I managed to make a Sub-Zero rage quit. Please write nice comments about my skills below. Thanks. I got 2 hours into this game and I dropped it. It was shit. It's very fitting to have Destroy All Humans of all games being an episode on Destroying My Gaming Backlog, huh? I played the original Destroy All Humans remake when it came out, and I finished it. I never grew up with the game originally, so the fun of it wore off after like 2 hours, but I still finished the game. It's not a bad game by all means, it's just, I don't know, it's definitely a relic of its time. Now on the other hand, I did actually grow up with Destroy All Humans 2. I don't know how I managed to get it as a kid, considering the fact it was rated 15 in the UK, and my parents were those types of parents who refused to get me games that my age wasn't above the age rating of. Yet despite this, I somehow grew up playing Saints Row the Third and GTA 5. I don't know what happened there. I would spend hours and hours in Destroy All Humans 2 because it was an open world game. Well, it had multiple open worlds, actually taking place in different countries. But I never knew that as a kid because I never got past the first area, considering the fact I never ever did any of the main missions. All I needed was that purple disc gun, and I was entertained for 12 hours straight. The remake looks visually great too. I love the cartoony art style. Everything is just so pleasant to look at. Even Crypto's weird pulsating paws on the side of his head. They always catch my eye, and not for the right reasons. Those things are kinda scary. But despite all of this, I didn't have as much fun playing the remake. The missions fall into the same shit as the original Destroy All Humans. You're usually just killing humans, taking over their bodies and to get information on more humans so you can kill even more of them. But this time it takes place in an open world with barely anything to do in it. This isn't me saying it's a bad game, don't get me wrong. I just think my childlike imagination and wonder has just gone. I mean, I'm 23 years old, what the fuck am I saying? Just having fun in the open world sandbox, throwing people around, laughing at the physics. That's something I did a lot as a kid, but I just can't find any enjoyment in doing that anymore. So instead, when I played it, I just focused on doing the missions, and it just felt like a checklist. It's not really something I can fix. I can't have the same fun I used to just fucking around in the open areas. I managed to get 2 hours into it, and I got to the second open area, which is literally just London, and I decided to drop the game to focus on something else. I think I might come back to it sometime in the future, but for now, it's out of my backlog and it's not a priority. Horizon Forbidden West is easily the most high quality Ubisoft game you can play. This statement is probably a bit confusing considering the fact Forbidden West isn't made by Ubisoft, but hear me out. It follows the exact same formula as every single Ubisoft open world game. It has all the staples like towers, except this time they're giant robot giraffes that move within a radius, and you need to plan how to get on top of it, which actually makes climbing the tower actually engaging. There's also bandit camps and outposts, which, well, they're just like every other bandit camp and outpost in any game. Their quality highly depends on the combat in the open world game they're in. Luckily though, one of the best aspects of Forbidden West is its combat, especially against the robots. Every single one has distinct weak spots that you need to shoot to be able to do any form of decent damage. Some of these weak spots are special crafting items you can get, and even heavy weaponry you can use yourself against the robot. That's actually one of the main reasons why I dropped Zero Dawn on the PS4, because I literally cannot aim with a controller for my life. So I sold it after learning a PC port was coming back in 2020, which was 4 years ago. Why is time a thing? Why does it keep moving? Why can't we just pause it sometimes? I'm having a literal crisis right now, and I'm not talking about the game, because I already talked about it in season 1 of my backlog series, Conquering My Gaming Backlog. Specifically, it was Conquering My Gaming Backlog, episode 5. Horizon Forbidden West is visually outstanding too. Like, in terms of sheer quality and its graphics, I don't think you can really get any better than this. I think this is literal peak. I can't say the same about the story because it's literally just this scene from Rise of the Skywalker.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I'm not going to elaborate whatsoever on this. If you've played Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. I don't like the main character Aloy either. Aloy is annoying as fuck, mainly because of how much she talks to herself about puzzle solutions and random ass obvious shit, which is blatantly a way of the developers guiding the player, but it just ends up being downright annoying and kind of patronizing. It's definitely a good game though, but it plays everything far too safe with its open world, hence why I referred to it as a high quality Ubisoft game, and it's also why I ended up dropping it after 10 hours of playing.
One must imagine the backlog gamer happy because I'm never finishing this, but I'm trying. And the most recent game that I've gone through on my backlog, well, Fallout 4 is way better than everyone is telling you it is. Hi, it's Brad of KindofBradAtThis, live service sucks, Mojang I do a lot of sucking. Wait, but recently, when I'm not, I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4, and I just gotta say it right away, Fallout 4 is way better than you think. I went into this game expecting, well, kind of the worst. It feels like this game was the start of the downward spiral that is Bethesda's reputation, but really, in playing it, yeah, I don't get any of the hate this game has at all. This game is kind of a masterpiece. Boston as a setting, unlike any other Fallout game, is just so alive because, you know, there's stuff to do in the world. While I've enjoyed other games in the series, I mean, New Vegas, I love you. I think it's pretty fair to say that these games are aging a little, poorly, and with Fallout 4, there's just so much to love. The art style alone goes a long way in really making this game feel timeless. I mean, aside from the lip movements, it looks like this game came out this year. The weapon customization system alone, let alone the settlements, creates this feeling that you're actually scavenging this wasteland for things you need, which is just kind of not in the other games. Add in the fact that Fallout 4 easily has the best environmental storytelling, shooting, and, well, guys, I'm gonna be honest, the characters in the story are surprisingly nuanced, and I think anyone who says they aren't, probably watched too many 4-hour-long video essays.
Either you execute dance, or I will, Knight. The choice is yours.
You think I shoot Rick? That is my best friend. That's a man that I love. I love him like he's my brother.
Fallout 4 is just wow. Anyway, Prox, thank you for having me. I'm gonna go back into my hibernation, and
well, that was strange. Whenever I saw No More Heroes in videos and on Twitter, I would always think the game looked kinda stupid. I don't know, something about it just looked off to me. Then I actually played it.
Oh my god. I get
there will never ever be a game like No More Heroes again. Holy shit, it is awesome. Before I talk about the game, I just want to make it clear that I'm using some random ass long play footage, as I played it on my Steam Deck, so I couldn't record any of the footage for myself. So credit to insert name here for their footage. No More Heroes has you playing as a degenerate anime fan called Travis Touchdown. I'm not even joking here, this guy is an actual loser. His goal within the game is to become the #1 assassin, and he's manipulated into doing so by this French woman called Sylvia, who agrees to sleep with him if he reaches #1.
If I become #1, will you do it with me?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Come on, just once.
Again, I'm not even joking here, his entire reasoning for committing literal mass genocide is for a chance to fuck.
You set me up, bitch.
To take on any of these ranked assassins, you need to pay a fee to enter, and the way you get money within the game is by doing jobs. And I'm not talking about cool jobs, I mean doing shit like mowing a lawn. This is awesome. As mundane as these are, they feel essential for the game's pacing, because I think if it was just the missions and boss fights, one after the other, it would get stale extremely quickly, because No More Heroes isn't exactly in depth with its combat. So these moments of mundane chores make you really appreciate the simple combat even more. No More Heroes is a cult classic for an incredibly good reason. It absolutely slaps, and I'm so glad I finally played through it. Now I can't say the same for
Some people fuck at funerals. I cut off heads.
This scene is probably the best thing about this game. It is a pretty decent game, but it does a lot of things that just make me dislike it, especially compared to the first. The combat is far better, but it's still pretty simplistic compared to most action games. They also got rid of the open world, making you do jobs to pay an entry fee. You can still do jobs, but you don't need to because you don't have to pay a fee to do the missions, which means it falls into the trap of becoming pretty stale very quickly. Something this game brags about is the fact there are 50 assassins this time you'll need to go through to climb the ranks, which is a huge step up, but then you get through the game and come to learn that 75% of them are killed off screen. Also, the assassins aren't as iconic as the original No More Heroes. There are some definite highlights, but a lot of them fall into the forgettable category. So yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of this one. Cooking is very stressful. It's something I try to avoid doing in real life. I genuinely hate it. I could live the rest of my life just eating a slice of bread, but obviously my doctors are losers and say I shouldn't do that and eat fucking broccoli with my bread. Ugh. Who do they think they are? Overcooked 2 takes that stress and turns it into an arcadey co-op game. One that brings the absolute worst out of people. It's pretty awesome though, I can't lie. Now it would be one thing if you're doing all of this in a random ass kitchen with nothing else going on, but this is a game we're talking about. So you have to cook in places like a mine, a hot air balloon, and even a river for whatever reason. Who the fuck is ordering food in these places? These aren't just aesthetic changes though. Random things can happen that impact what you need to do to cook the food, and every single mission is something you literally need to brace yourself for because you never know what things will happen within that level. There's also time management with certain ingredients. Like for example, if you need to cook some meat for a burrito or a burger, there's a timer on that meat you're cooking, and if it goes over that time limit, it will start a fire and burn the food, meaning that's lost time because every order also has a time limit, which signifies when the customer who ordered it gets impatient and you end up losing money if the time runs out on it. It's not a casual experience, but it's a lot of fun, especially if you're looking for a co-op game to play with friends. Thank you all so much for watching the final episode of Destroying My Gaming Backlog. Well, at least the final episode within the season. It will make a return with a new name and a new intro with extra gimmicks within it. I constantly want to improve this backlog series and add new things onto it to keep it consistently fresh. And I really appreciate all of your support. I would love to know what games you've been playing within your backlogs. Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next one.